Hi guys, welcome to Let's Talk BD, the official podcast of the BD School, the first educational platform entirely dedicated to business development. Here we interview business development professionals working in the field every day, as well as startup founders, so they can give you all the insights, tips, and best practices to help you become a better business development professional. Let's get ready for the next episode. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk BD. Usually I'm your host, but today we decided to switch things around. I will not be hosting this podcast. With me there is actually someone. Sahr, the floor is yours, and let's get started.
Yes, great. Thank you for having me. Well, I am Sahr. I am a product owner, previously a software developer, and a big fan of the BD School. I'm really excited for today's episode because I've listened to a lot of the podcasts, and I think in every one you touch on your own experience, but we don't get to sit down and talk to you. So I think it's really exciting to get the opportunity to do that now. So why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell us about yourself and your career?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sahr. And that's true. I tend to talk a lot during the episodes, but never really delved into it. Happy to tell you more about me. I have as of now, about 13 years experience in business development. However, my life in business development was not wasn't really my calling at the very beginning. I actually have a background in international relations and politics, so something a little bit different than business. But business development kind of crossed my path when I was at the university. So I had to pay for my studies, and I found a job as a business developer. I must admit, I didn't even like it as a job in the first place, because I was working for a very big international insurance company, and that wasn't really the greatest way to do business development, in my opinion. I always felt like I was selling something that was not really necessary, maybe to people, and also the world of insurances is not let's say, doesn't really agree with me, I would say. So my first experience wasn't the greatest, but it definitely gave me the solid basis for later. And I have to say, so I really discovered my passion for business development when I started working for startups, because business development at startups is not just, cold calling or cold emailing, but it's really about building a business from scratch. And that's really the thing I love the most about business development, really being at the forefront of the business, coming up with new ideas for growth and so on. Since 2014, I moved to the Netherlands, where I'm currently based, although I'm Italian originally. And here in the Netherlands, I worked mainly for startups and scale-ups, always in business development. And then in 2017, when I was working for one of these scale-ups, I started having some issues with business development. So I was not that great as I used to be anymore. And that really pushed me to get out, and seek help. So I started talking to other business developers. I created a community at some point, hoping to steal some secrets from people. But what I found out actually is that we were all on the same boat. So we were all a bit confused about business development, without really guidance or, a place to seek knowledge and to have a reliable source. And when I found out that, I thought that it was a bit strange. Because, for business, for marketing or sales or anything else, there is one point of reference. Like if I think about inbound marketing, for example, I immediately think of HubSpot, right? If I think about B2B tech sales, I think about Sales Hacker. But then for business development, there was nothing. And I was like, oh, that's a bit strange. And then I decided to give birth to the BD School. So since 2018, now we're busy with this and really sharing knowledge and making sure that business developers have a point of reference where they can go to feel safe and get the knowledge they need to be good at their job.
Mm-hmm, right. So many questions now after what you just said there. But I think one of the patterns that I noticed from a lot of the people that you're speaking to in podcast and what you just touched on is that would it be fair to say that a lot of business developers are thrown into the deep end when starting a new role? Like they may be thrown into a company that hasn't even defined their role yet. So from all of this information that you've collated, where is the best place to start for a business developer in a new role?
Totally. So that is very true. I've been in this situation myself. So already I didn't choose business development as my career path. That's something that I developed later. And as a matter of fact, many people do the same, especially people, that don't come necessarily from a business background. Many other people that did international relations, for example, end up in business development eventually at some point. That for me was really like one weird thing, because I really believe that people should be doing what they like doing, right? So they should choose something that they are convinced about, that they know what it is about, and they're really, passionate about. That's not necessarily the case in business development. Most of the people really end up there because it's a very common job. There are a lot of job offers, so it's relatively easy to enter. The problem is that because it's so easy to enter, sometimes I think we should ask ourselves some questions, which means like, okay, great. Like all these companies want to hire business developers, but do they have the support system they need? What happens really in business development is that companies, of course, want to grow. So they are always looking for people to grow, but they don't really have clear ideas on how they want to grow. So very often then they end up, giving random tasks to people, or other times, just repeating on one specific strategy over and over again. In my case, I worked for a few companies in which one time my job was just sending automatic emails. That was it. Mm-hmm. In another one was just to send messages on LinkedIn. And I was like, okay, that's great. So there is a bit of a problem there. I think the main thing is really a misalignment in expectations between the candidates and the companies, because of course candidates, maybe they've heard of business development and they have a specific idea what that looks like, but then companies don't really know what they want the business developers to do, and there is always a clash at some point, because of course it's not really sustainable, and typically you don't really get results with that. That was really my case with the last two companies. No matter how many emails we sent, it was just not going anywhere. So I think really the best place to start is, of course, as usual, seek some information online, see what you can find. And I know that it's a bit challenging for business development, but then really start getting foundational knowledge on BD. So really read a lot of books about business in general. And then you start diving deeper into all the different elements of business development. Of course, we're going to talk about that maybe later. But it's really, start with whatever you can find online, so you know what you need to learn. And then from that, you start with books. And then only at a later stage, you should really go into something more, concrete, like really a proper course that can help you figure out everything in your career.
And the misalignment between the business developers and the business, is that something that occurs more often in a startup environment where the founder is still closely connected to their idea of what the business is, or is that something that you see in bigger corporations as well?
That's funny, because actually, so of course in startups, it's always chaos. So if you work for a startup at any function, you have to be ready to do everything literally that needs to be done. But paradoxically, business development is a lot more fun and structured in a way at startups, because it's more genuine, in the sense that business development at startups is really its original function, which is finding ways to grow the company, which is a very creative process. So you really need to be looking at new trends, figuring out new ways of, getting attention from people and getting people excited about you. What happens later, and this I really found out actually in mainly at scale-ups, and then big corporates, of course, it's a little bit different because they have usually a lot of resources. So it's a bit of a different topic there. But at scale-ups, for example, so a bit bigger companies, which, have some traction, figured out a way to, be successful. What happens there is that business development becomes more like sales, of course, and that's why then there is all the confusion. But in my opinion, they're really missing out on opportunities because, business developers end up in companies, so work with the scale-ups and they're like, amazing, I can they have, a lot of resources. They're already well known. So we can really exploit what we have, the visibility we have, and do something really cool. But what happens in reality is that because we know that something works, for example, I don't know, cold calling or cold emailing or these LinkedIn messages, companies get comfortable in this, in this bubble. Mm-hmm. And then they just keep repeating that over and over again. And the result is that you don't really take advantage of what business development has to offer. And then let's say if you have either the wrong person on board or the wrong processes or the wrong target customer in mind, you really risk to waste, let's say, 6 months, 8 months, even more sometimes, and then nothing comes out of it. So it is, of course, well, at any level, at any company, you can find, bad apples, let's say, so a bit unstructured business development. But paradoxically, at startups, you actually do more of the real business development, whereas at scale-ups or bigger companies, it's more like one thing or another, and you really need to like that thing.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I think, on your feet, ever-changing role, wherever you are. Yeah. I know that you talk a lot about the different personalities, and you have the background in international relations and politics. So, is business development really confined to a certain type of personality or a certain type of person?
Not necessarily. I don't think so, at least, because I think the cool thing about business development is that you actually need a bit of all the personalities, right? So you need to have a bit of an analytical mind because you need to look at trends, and then you need to, say, okay, well, this seems like a good trend to follow, so we should be doing that. You need to look at numbers because, of course, whatever we're doing, we need to do it with a certain goal in mind. So we need to have a look for that. But on the other hand, we also need to be very creative. So we need to think out of the box, and we need to be really people's persons because obviously our job is very much relationship based. So there is really a lot of human connections that go into business development. So I think there isn't necessarily one type of personality. However, of course, if you really want to be successful in business development, you do need to put an effort into developing all these other ones. So let's say if you're really analytical person, it doesn't mean you cannot be successful in business development, but you need to accept that you need to become more sociable maybe, or a bit more creative and so on. Mm-hmm. The cool thing is that all these skills can be learned. So that's great. We had many students, for example, that they started and they're like, oh, I'm really not creative at all. Like, I'm really organized, I'm really good at that. I'm good at doing things timely and so on, but I'm not really good at coming up with new ideas. Then eventually, after 5 weeks of training, you will see that also these people will become very creative and do things that you would not expect them to do, but they would do them successfully. So I think really one key aspect of business development is that you need to be ready to challenge yourself. And then if you have that, it doesn't really matter what personality you have. You can always evolve into something more, right? So, I think it's good for everyone as long as they're willing to challenge themselves.
Yeah, in terms of creativity, I mean, there are the resources available, such as the BD School, where you can steal a little bit of creativity and then use your analytical skills to change that to something that may suit the company. But what about the products or the business itself? A business developer, true or false? True or false? A business developer must really believe in the product or service that they are selling. Or are there skills enough to take them the whole way?
I think people should always believe in what they're selling, in what they're working for. I think especially in business development, because as a business developer, you're also a bit the product of the company, right? So you're the first person that people see when they get in touch with the company. So obviously, if you're not really convinced about what you're selling or the company you work for, people are going to perceive it. But more than that, you're just not going to do enough of the things that need to be done to be successful, right? And to actually get results. So it happened to me too. One of the latest companies I worked for was a recruitment software. I mean, the company is great and I learned a lot. So it was amazing from that point of view. But the product itself was not really something exciting. The company at the point was also very product led, but not really for the people, but more for the product itself, So there was almost no soul. And I really do need to have this, human aspect and to know why we're doing something. What's the bigger purpose behind that? And of course, it's not the same for everyone because some people are motivated by other things. So some people are motivated by, seeing the product grow or maybe, seeing the company make a lot of money and so on. But in my case, for example, really what I need is to have a purpose in what I do. And when this lacks, especially if there is a product which is, let's be honest, there are so many recruitment software out there, so at some point it was really like chasing each competitor. So it was like, okay, they did this feature, we need to do it too. So it was like, okay, there was really, no point, right? So I think, seeing that you have such a critical role in getting people excited, if you're not excited yourself about the product or service you're selling, you're not going to go really far. And then you either burn out or you quit or the company lets you go because there isn't really the outcome of what you're doing. So definitely you should fall in love with with the solution you're proposing.
Yes, agreed. I think that can be applied to pretty much any and every job. It is always, I guess, good to dip your feet into something, and you don't really have to care about it that much to develop your skills. But then if you're looking for something that keeps you fulfilled, you do have to believe in it, whether you're an engineer or a salesperson or a business developer.
Totally.
So I think that there's definitely been a huge change in the world since the start of the pandemic. And I think we're looking at products, services, and the way that we work in a different way now. How do you think this has affected the business development world? And what are the major changes in the scene right now?
Yeah, we definitely affected us greatly. I think, virtually any business in the world, every person in the world has been affected to a certain extent from what happened, of course. But really, I think the major problem for business developers was that, of course, before you had certain channels which were, let's say 100% or at least 90%, sure of working, which was seeing people in person, calling them and having some sort of human interaction with them. And then what happened is that suddenly the entire world went online. Personally, I think it was a huge opportunity for all of us, but we cannot really deny that it was also very challenging because then all in a sudden, like it was very noisy online, right? So there were webinars every 2 seconds. There were online events every 2 minutes. It was really like you had all this stress, related to, okay, how do I get the attention of the people that matter to me, right? So that was really the major problem. So all the students we had in 2020, for example, they were all people that suddenly they didn't know what to do anymore. Because like, okay, so how do we get the attention now? Because before, you could call an office and it was challenging maybe because you had to get past the secretary and then, get to talk to the people that matter to you, or you had to travel somewhere to go to a big conference. But it was a lot more comfortable in a way because you had humans, and I mean, it's always better when you can see someone in person, or at least you can hear their voice. You can, you get a lot, you get a lot of social clues from the way people move, the way people talk, the way people look at you. So of course it's a big advantage. And I think really we had to relearn how to socialize, but in a context that was completely digital. In our case, we started always, so since 2018-19, we were always digital, so always online. So it didn't really affect us that much because we were used to that. And the reason we were digital before and fully online is because we wanted everyone to have access to this type of knowledge, right? So it doesn't matter where you're based. You should have the same access to knowledge as someone that lives in the Netherlands where we're based. So for us, it wasn't really much of a problem. And we really set up the business in that way. But of course, for many business developers, it was a huge challenge. I think now, especially 2021 was more like, I think it still was very challenging. For some aspects, I think even more than 2020, because I feel like 2020, like everybody was a bit, like they didn't know what to do. So they had to learn new things. And then 2021 was all this hybrid model, in which like, you didn't know if you had to be online, offline. And then when you were offline, you suddenly didn't know how to behave anymore offline either. So I think it was still very challenging. But I think really the main problem was, okay, how do we get attention now? So how can we get results now? Because I mean, besides the digital aspect of it, there was also the fact that many companies didn't really know how to handle the crisis, right? So what does it mean for our business? Are we going to go down, or do we need to change what we offer? And I mean, consumer behavior changed drastically in these 2 years. So there were a lot of different elements, that contributed to this confusion. And definitely for us was, okay, how do we deal with this now? So yeah, I think that was the main challenge so far.
Okay, and where do you think this is all leading us to? Where do you think, how will we be working now, having learned?
I think we really need to get used to this. So first, obviously, digital is not going anywhere. So I think it's there to stay. Pandemics or not, I think, is because I think people also saw a lot of benefits in doing things online. I remember I'm part of this group, it's called Dutch Founders Group. So it's about Dutch founders, startup founders. But the organization is global because most of their events are online. And there was someone at some point that posted an event was like, oh, it's in the Netherlands, no, it's in Amsterdam, so you have to be there offline. And there was someone based, I don't remember if it was in India or someone in Asia, and it was like, oh, that's really a pity because it seems really interesting, and now I cannot attend, So I think now people are used, you need to be online as well. So I think that at least for 2022, and I think moving forward, things need to be hybrid, because if you're not hybrid, you're missing out on one big part of your audience. So you need to be hybrid. And as business developers, we really need to work on our adaptability skills. So we need to learn how people behave online. So what's the etiquette, when we're online? And we need to be ready to switch to offline whenever it's needed. So it's really about being adaptable and building a new skill set, which enables you to basically play on all the grounds, right? So, okay, if you're online, that's how we behave. If you're offline, that's how we behave. But you really need to get this going. I think, hybrid is really that's something that is here to stay. And then people they're used to the comfort also, I heard a lot of my colleagues was like, hey, but now we have to go to this event. It's, we have to travel for 2 hours and then we have to go back. And in these 2 hours, how much work I can do, and that's true, because for 2 years, I think the entire world became hyper productive, I think also hyper burned out because I don't think it's sustainable. But people now are used to that, it's like, no, if I have 5 minutes, I don't want to spend them on a train or on a plane, I want to be sitting at my desk. Maybe I can watch something on the background, but at least up there, I can book more meetings. I can do more things. So I think people really got comfortable with that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there's been a shift in the work-life balance in there? Do you think this is going to be affecting us? Because I feel like from my side of things anyway, for sure, I've seen a lot of people who are prioritizing their life in this work-life balance. Even when they are in lockdown and they're at home, they'll say, I'm gonna knock off now. This is it. I'm done for the day. But has there been? There's. Let me try and word this correctly. There's obviously the pressure to be productive without having the offices. But is there also, are you seeing a shift to people prioritizing their life in work-life balance?
Totally. And I think it's a really good thing for business development, because as we started at the beginning, many people ended up in business development already a bit randomly. And we have this habit, that, if there is a job available and it seems cool, we take it, right? Because that's, why not? We can change later. But I'm really happy, that these 2 years really gave time to people to realize what they really want and what matters for them. Because I really believe when people are self-aware, they know what they want, they know what they like, and they know what are their values. That's really where you can have, a workforce which is really productive. Because to be productive, you don't need to work 12 hours a day, right? Which I think is what we all did these 2 years. I think that's also why so many people are quitting their jobs. I don't think it's really because they don't believe in what they're doing or they don't like what they're doing, but it's because they're done with it. They're completely fed up with it, because for 2 years we've been in front of a screen doing the same thing over and over again without our colleagues to vent with, or without the coffee break, without the ping pong game, that you would do every day. So I don't think that people are necessarily, fed up with their jobs, but there is all these human elements that is missing. So they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I don't think it's also going to stay like this forever because, well, realistically, not everybody can become entrepreneur and, have a successful company, because that's also a bit of a trend that we see. Everybody wants to have their company. And then when they start, they realize that it's not that easy as it used to be. So then they go back to their job. So I think it's more, I don't think that's really here to stay. I think though people are really fed up with this. So, at some point, you quit what is stressing you out the most, which for most of us is work. But I think on the other hand, it's really good that people are questioning, is it really what I'm supposed to do? Because I think when people, again, when they're self-aware and they're doing what they're supposed to do, because that's in line with their values, that's really where you can have a productive workforce, which is not burned out, that is able to set boundaries, that is able to finish at 6 p.m., 5 p.m., whatever that is, or even to continue working because they really love that, but without the burnout, So I think it's very positive. And especially for us in BD, I hope that the main lesson of these 2 years is really like, okay, next time I look for a job, I'm going to look up the company. I'm going to talk to people that work there. I want to see if what they're selling me is really true, and if it's really in line with my values. I really hope that's going to happen more and more often.
Yeah, that's a really good point you made there. This the repetitiveness becomes very obvious without the workplace banter to make you, maybe on a Monday someone has a different joke from the joke that turns up on Tuesday, but without those interactions, Monday and Tuesday are going to look the same.
Totally.
I think one thing that I hear a lot in the business development world is if I had $1 for every time I heard that a person got into business development randomly, I would be very, very wealthy. So for those who are interested in getting into a career in business development, how do they get in? We can't all wait for that random moment. So how do they get into this field?
Totally. So I think, it's, one of our vision at the BD School is really to create the next generation of business developers. And what does it mean? So it doesn't mean just young people that want to enter in business development. Of course, that's amazing. And we need more and more people doing this job. It's one of the most trendy jobs and fastest growing according to the World Economic Forum. So in the next 10 years, we're sure there are going to be more and more jobs in business development. For us, really, the new generation means a group of people that are passionate about business development, that want to do the job because they know what they're getting into and they like it. I don't think it's for everyone because it's quite demanding and it's challenging. You really need to be passionate about what you're doing, and you need to, as we said before, challenge yourself, like go always one step extra to achieve your goals. That's really what we mean with that. Like people should be choosing what they like to do based on their skill set, their attitudes, and so on. And I think a really good place to start is to talk to people that already do this job. So if you're curious about business development, join a group, join a community. We have one, the BD Network, where we actually met. You can join and you can talk to other business developers, ask them what does their day look like? What do they do on a daily basis? That's already a very good point to start. Also because business development is very different. So you might talk to 10 people and they all do it differently. So if you talk to many people, then you have a good idea of what you like and what you don't like. And then you can use this information to look for jobs that fit your personality, fit your ambitions, and that can really help you grow. And then the other thing is really go on the field and start doing it. So get an internship, for example, and start working in the field to see if that's really something you like. Personally, we're an education company. We provide training. So I might shoot myself in the feet with this, with what I'm about to say. But I think there's been for a long time a rush to taking whatever course you can find online. I don't think that's good. I think you should spend your money on courses once you're really sure about what you want to do, because taking a course, taking a training is really about, honing your skills, enhancing your skills. And, you should do it with certain goals in mind. We had one student, for example, I always take him as an example because I don't know, I was really proud of him. But Alessandro, like when he joined our training, was like, I want to work for Oracle. I want to move to Dublin. And I want to be a business developer there because I really like this type of job and I really love the company and so on. So he came with a very specific goal. So he really managed to take the most out of the training. So we prepared interviews together. He was extremely determined. He contacted a lot of people, many recruiters at Oracle, many of the people that were working there, because he wanted to see if his expectations were, aligned with what people were doing. And within 6 months after taking the training, he actually did move to Dublin and now he's working at Oracle. Wow. That was really amazing, So I think, give it a try. So if you think that it's a job because it sounds cool, I think that's what lurks people into business development. It sounds really fancy. I'm going to develop a business, but developing a business, it takes, certain skills and certain ambitions and certain level of patience, let's say. So talk to people and then get an internship or get a job and see if that's really what you like. After you do this, so if you work for a company for, let's say, 6 months and you are, convinced that is your job, then at that point start, focusing on your, on developing your skills. So at that point you should take a training or a course, because so there you can really gain competitive advantage, because most of the people, as we said before, so they are there like a bit randomly, and because they're not sure, because they're not doing the type of job they really like, then they're just they hang in there. While if you are first curious and then you talk to people, then you do an internship, and then it's like, okay, that's it. Then you should take a course, a training, get certified, and then really become a professional. Because the majority of people are not. And the majority of people also are not looking forward, to learn and to, challenge themselves. And it's uncomfortable. So it's really uncomfortable. And most of the people don't want to do that. But I think if you're sure that that is your job and, it's really fulfilling, you should go all in for it. So, and training, I talk about training because I think training is the most efficient way to do that, and I learned it on my skin. So I'm the type of person that likes to learn on the job. But then I finally realized that I could be much faster if I had someone partnering up with me. So now every time I want to learn something new, I either get a personal coach for that specific thing, or I take a course. And then, of course, like, it's not that thing that is gonna, make you successful, because obviously, so it's not something that you do once and then it's done. But it really kicks in this habit of learning new things. It teaches you things that maybe you didn't even know that you had to know, and that really starts this process of continuous learning, which is what makes you successful on the long term. And I think the earlier you do that, the better it is for your career, because then you don't waste any time. You can grow, you can get promoted, you can get a higher salary, you can go on holiday if you like to, on very fancy places because you managed to negotiate a very good salary, and so on.
That's really good advice. I think that business developers are swimming in a pool amongst entrepreneurs, because that the entrepreneur, they're doing it alone. It's early days. They're going to be doing a lot of business development research and handling that experience and stuff. Do you think a lot of the advice you just gave applies also to the entrepreneur, or what is the advice that you would give for that one person working alone?
Totally. So I always say that, as a founder or an entrepreneur, you're the first business developer of your company. So obviously, if you're not doing that, nobody's ever going to do that for you. I mean, the disadvantage of entrepreneurs is that exactly this, you are completely alone. So everything else you want to do, you really need to, get on the field, start doing it with all your insecurities, your doubts, and you just have to do it because otherwise you don't move forward. So I do think it applies. I think in that case, though, you should even get trained even before, like you shouldn't wait 6 months. Again, that's a mistake I made when I started my company. Again, with my mindset, I want to learn on my own. Like as a business developer, also I like the process of, not knowing and, just figuring it out a little bit. But I must say, especially in the last months of 2021, I was like, okay, no, I really need to get this done fast. How can I do that? I hire a coach and that's it. And this person is going to help me figure out what I need to do next. I did it, for example, in preparation of 2022. So I really wanted to make sure that I got the strategy right, that we were working on the right goals, that we were working on something that, would make me feel accomplished and that could have the largest impact possible. So I got my coach. She's called Angela. We had a couple of talks and she really helped me, organize my thoughts and make sure that things would work well for next year. And I'm already, I already made my personal development plan. So for next year, I already have some training prepared for myself, mainly on products, because that's something I'm not extremely, let's say, I don't know much about. So I need to train myself. And I figured, okay, we just need to go for formal training. So at least I can get started with that. So I think as an entrepreneur, it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to figure it out because let's be honest, we can do something when we try to figure it out. There's so much knowledge for free on the internet. So we can do that. But it's really a matter of, how fast you want to go in your professional life. I tend to be very ambitious. I want to, get things done. I want to get to my goals as fast as possible. So yeah, I figured on my own expense that the best way to do that is to, get formal education and get things moving. Because also once you start learning, then there is this thing, which you're like, oh, wow, I'm so inspired now. I can do this thing. So what more can I do if I learn something else? So yeah, I think as entrepreneurs is really our first job is really to study, study, work on ourselves. And then if that goes well, the business is going to go well as well. Then we're going to have a lot more resources to make it successful.
And there are a lot of online resources available, such as the BD School, which is what I want to speak about now. So I'm sure anyone listening right now has probably already heard of the BD School and knows about it. But why don't you give us a quick little introduction?
Absolutely. So the BD School is the first educational platform entirely dedicated to business development. And we're really on a mission to help business developers and entrepreneurs figure out the skills and knowledge they need to be successful in their job. And the way we do it is as business developers. So we like to be very creative in the way we teach business development, which means we don't see it only as, getting the formal training, which of course, as we said before, is the fastest way to get to your professional goals. But realistically, everybody likes to learn in a different way. So our goal was really to provide all these different formats and ways to connect with people and to inspire them to learn more about their job. Many people, for example, even like this podcast, someone in the community asked us oh, do you know if there is a podcast about business development? And we're like, oh, that's true. People love to listen, and they have a lot of time, if they're working, they can listen to something. And, maybe not everything is going to be interesting for them at that specific moment, but it's going to start something in their mind, right? It's going to give them some reference, some inspiration, or maybe some motivation when they don't feel like working, right? So our goal is really to keep inspiring people to learn more about business development. And we try to do it in a very practical way. So everything you find here, so it's rare that we have something, this very huge theoretical things. Is more about, okay, this is the theory, which you always need. I think this is very important, but then this is how you apply it. And these are the templates and these are the tools and so on. So at the moment we have, of course, the blog is the most complete resource we have at the moment. So it's really, we have blog articles, about 100 blog articles now on really many different topics related to business development. not only sales, but from marketing, strategic partnerships, product development. So you really find a lot of useful resources for that, from something more like theoretical to very practical things. We have a community, of course. We really believe in the power of community. We don't think we can do this alone. We think it's something that needs to start in the community. We all need to get together. We need to share our stories, our best practices, because that's how we learn. So we really focus a lot on the peer-to-peer aspect of our platform and really facilitating knowledge sharing among people. This year, and I'm extremely proud of it, but we launched our mentorship platform, and the mentors are all alumni of the BD School. So they're all certified business developers. They come from many different sides of the world because, again, like we want to offer different perspectives on the business development, and they're absolutely amazing. So we've been doing a really thorough job into preparing personal development plans for our mentees, and some of the mentors are still in touch with them after more than 1 year. So it's really an ongoing process of teaching people with their own experience, and then of course the training. Our flagship course is a 5-week training, which really takes you from the basics of business development to very advanced ways to calculate the return on investment on your business development activities, passing from developing the mindset, the strategies, the tactics, and the skills, of course, of business development. And our strength is really that we don't only stop there, so the course is not, you take the course and it's done. Our job is really to be with our students from the moment they come to our training until they actually, succeed with their jobs, they achieve their goals and so on. So we're very proud, like all our students from the very first one is still a very active member of our community. So we're very proud of that. Again, we think this needs to be the way, because that's, again, it's not something we can do alone. It's a community effort. It's something we really do together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that a lot of the challenges that we discussed earlier can be solved by that community. The communication between that community, everything from miscommunications to lack of resources, all that could be solved by having a community. Which is actually how I met you. Your ability to gather people together. Your LinkedIn game is so strong. It's so impressive.
Thank you.
So no, I understand that the BD School is about to delve into the world of product development. So where have you found, this product development is my background, but where have you found that product development and business development meet?
So yeah, actually for us, that was the biggest surprise, we found when we started really researching methodically business development, because as we talked to more and more business developers, we started figuring out new things about this world that were really unknown to us. And really the main one was that many of the business developers didn't really identify as, salespeople, because that's, again, a big misconception about business development. But they're like, I'm not sure I belong to your community because I don't really do sales. It's like, oh, but wait, business development is not about sales. What do you do? And they would be like, I do mainly product development. I was like, okay, tell me more now. What's this news? And after talking to people then, so we found out really the main link between the two is the connection with the audience, right? So as business developers, you're really on the field. So whatever you do anyway, so if you're creating a new product or service, or you work for a new startup, which is really going off the ground now. But even if you work for a very big corporate as a business developers, you're always in the face of the customer, partners, and all the people that can help you grow the business on the long term. Which means you have like this absolutely privileged position of knowing instantly what people have in their mind, right? So you might have like a group of people who are like, oh, like your product amazing, but if you don't have this feature, which is the only one I need, it's basically useless for me. And now there are two types of business developers. So the ones that don't do anything with that piece of information because they feel they don't have the right to do so. because they're salespeople. And then you have the ones that are very proactive, which also tend to be the most successful on the long run, which go back to their managers or to their colleagues that work in product, and they're like, hey, look, I have this huge client, like they could sign tomorrow if we have this feature. What do we do? And these people are really like great at communicating. They're able to explain the story of the customer to the product developers and really make them feel the pain of the customer, and making them see the opportunity of doing that specific feature and so on. So really the main link is really this one. So the fact that we're really on the field, we get the feedback from people, and then we should bring back this feedback to our companies and make sure that something happens. Then it stops there, right? Because business developers are very generalist. So, and I think it's a good thing. We shouldn't really specialize on one thing, because the moment we specialize, then we're not business developers anymore. I mean, our job is to constantly think about new ways to grow the business. And I think, the moment you start specializing on one thing, marketing or sales or product development, then you also lose this, I would say this overview, or this, this overview and creativity that is sparked by that. So yeah, then after the product owners, the product managers that deal with how that thing needs to be done. But the fact that there should be something done can come from business developers. Of course, it's not exclusive to business developers. And I think that's very important to say that, because, well, otherwise we end up in, there's this thing in growth marketing, they always say everything is growth. I don't want to end up in saying everything is business development. That's not the case, because we don't have the skills for that, but we have the knowledge of the customers. And that's our secret weapon, let's say, which then helps the company grow also from a product perspective.
Mm-hmm. That's a really, really good point. I think if you're an agile company that works with the Scrum methodologies, it's the role of the product owner, who is the client facing owner of the product. Mm-hmm. And through the requirement analysis and all that jazz, and communicating with the client, writing these user stories, we fill in a lot of those gaps, because it's essentially the product owner's job to get the problem, take it to the team, and fix it, and provide a solution. But because we do this in development and the pre and post stages around the development, we don't tend to have conversations outside of that. That's where we're missing, and that's where the business developer, it's in those spaces that the business developer sits, and they can give you more of an insight. And I think a lot of the time in development, you can absolutely you can do 99% of the requirements, but there might be something that the client forgot from 6 months ago, or you forgot from 6 months ago. So I think it's a really, really good point. Okay, I'll have some quick fire questions for you to wrap this up now. Number one, can you share with us something that your listeners don't know about you? And you want them to know?
Me personally, like me as something they don't. I think I tend to be very talkative also on social media, so I think most people know what I like or what I don't like doing. But yeah, so one thing I'm really into is tennis. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. So that's my thing next to business development. But the thing is that every time I play tennis, then I try to apply lessons I learned from business development and vice versa. So in my mind, there is always like this, oh yeah, the tennis coach told me this thing, and it's also true for my business. So I'm always making these parallels. And then, I had this thing, like for me, business development is really a lifestyle, and that's something I say all the time, which means like every time I do something, I really do it as a business developer. Like if I'm starting a new hobby, I cannot just have a hobby, like I start immediately thinking about, okay, what would be the next step, and what would be the goal related to that, and how could we do this and that. Like last year, for example, in plain pandemic, I took up a new hobby, which was making candles. because I just wanted to try. I was always passionate about it. I was like, oh, nice, I have time, let's do that. But day 2 of making candles, I set up a website, I set up an Instagram page, I made a customer research, I created an entire business development plan for that. So like, I cannot really have a hobby. So maybe that's something, fun. That
I think that's great, being able to apply those skills that you have from business development and apply them to personal development. It's that moment where you have to hold back and not turn everything into a business.
Yeah, exactly. That's a problem.
But that's really interesting. Like I have Scrum boards for my life. It's
See?
the best way to plan things, right? And everything must be written down and done in 2 week spurts.
Exactly.
All right. My next question for you is, what was the best advice that you've received throughout your career?
There have been a few actually from some of my mentors for a long time. One was from one of my, actually the boss I worked the longest with, actually, which was also during the university time. It's called Michele, and we worked together for 6 years. So he had a business since he was 21 years old, and the business was he was doing like fairs, like trade fairs, and we were selling electronic products, among which also CDs, DVDs, and this kind of stuff, and first, like just seeing him setting up the business, being so successful, so dedicated, so hardworking, like already that was, a big life lesson, because it really helped me, so it's like, okay, that's how I want to have my business. I want to be like him. But then when I started with my company, he's always been super supportive, very optimistic and so on. But one thing he told me was something like, you need to make sure that people take you seriously. So, show up, like show your face and be at the best of yourself every time you talk to people. And that's something, that I don't know, I kind of embedded it in myself eventually. So I don't even, pay attention to that anymore. But that was really great advice. And that's something that eventually we'll also teach to our students now. So when they come to the training, why is that? Because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, you need people to believe in you, right? So you need people to follow you and to follow your lead, or, whatever you want them to do or know about you, they need to trust that you're the right person to say that thing. So that was really something that really shaped my professional life. So I always try to, be very hardworking and dedicated, and to be honest and, open with the people I had around me, because I always felt like, you need to be credible, and I think all these things play a role in that. So that was one of them. And then recently, it was actually my mom that told me, maybe sounds weird, but she told me, maybe you should be less ambitious, which of course on the spot, I took it a bit personally. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I cannot be less ambitious, but what she meant really was like, your life cannot be only work. So you also need to take rest. You need to take your mind off it. And, moms, they always have this way of saying things which you don't understand on the spot, because they're moms. They always know better, but you don't know. And then, after that, I had time to think about it. And, looking back at the year, I was like, oh, but that is true. If I really look at what I did this year, it was really mainly working. And I'm very happy I did all this, but I also think I need some rest. I need to refresh my mind sometimes, because every time I do it, then I feel better and I'm more productive. So I think this would be the 2 ones. So I don't think I will be less ambitious, but I will definitely put in my agenda also time to rest now, so that it fits in my business development life.
That's great advice. What about what is the worst advice you've received?
That is a good one. What's the worst advice? For me there was actually a coach I had for a while, and this person, it was more like, not really listening to, or like really studying me, or my business and so on. So it was really just speaking from their perspective, and it was like some more like, strategic advice on how I should do things. I'm not going really in the details of that because it's very recent, and so we're very close friends, so I'm not going to mention it. But the point was, sometimes people give you feedback without asking you questions and without really knowing the context in which you operate. And because of that, then sometimes you take decisions which are not in line with your values or even with the evidence that your business is giving you, right? And the risk there is that you get really confused, you get really off track, and then you start doing things because this person that knows more than you told you to do that. Again, we're still super good friends, so I love the guy and everything. But that time, I was like, dude, you didn't ask me anything, So I was really frustrated with that thing. So I decided not to listen to it. And I said, okay, you know what? I want to take responsibility. If I make a mistake, at least I learn from it and I made it with my own responsibility. But yeah, sometimes I think you really need to filter out the feedback you get. And for me, then after this experience, my point of reference is always like, okay, if the person asks me questions and really understands what I'm going through and then gives me their honest feedback, then I'm going to take it. If not, it's not relevant. So there was something extremely specific, but that was the main lesson I took from it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good conclusion as well, especially because it can be applied to the business development world. If you don't ask questions, you haven't done your analysis, then your plan is probably not ready, right?
Exactly.
Great. Well, that was my last question. Thank you very much for switching the mics over and giving me the opportunity to interview you today. I'm sure a lot of burning questions have been answered today from the audience. So
awesome.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Sahr. This was a great experience. So anytime you want to be our host again, you're definitely most welcome. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone listening. Be ready for an amazing 22. I think all of us need some, fulfillment and happiness next year. So, and in business development world, there will be some great news also from us. So stay tuned and see you in 2022. Bye, Sahr, and see you soon.